I'm going to show you the method that I commonly use to transplant into my main garden. It is so efficient that I practically get no transplant shock. And I'll show you a detailed comparison from when I first transplant them to 2 weeks after the transplant. The growth is tremendous during that time frame, and every single one of the plants have thrived. So, hope you enjoy. Oh, and this is days 2 and 3 of a 3-day weekend planting project that I did. Got my mower shredder all set up and ready to get to shredding some okra. Let's see what we got here. It's got a lot of moisture in it. Oh yeah, that's a nice cake right there. 3 or 4 cubic feet worth of mulch. Alright, well next I'm going to rake the cover off the top of the soil here, the mulch layer off, and get rid of weeds. Time to get the compost. This compost that I'm going to be putting or using is probably 10 weeks old, give or take a week. It's just made out of chicken bedding and kitchen scraps and fish scraps. I'll show you how much this is broken down. It's pretty crumbly. That woody stuff like pine straw and sticks doesn't break down very fast, but the chicken bedding is broken down and a lot of good stuff in there. Is that good stuff, Copper? I just put the compost directly on top of the topsoil after I raked aside all the mulchy material, and then the only digging I'm going to do is using a garden hoe to make a little spot for each of my plants that I'm going to transplant. So that'll mix in some of that compost right where the plants are starting out, and then we'll be pretty close to done. But the principle is just put that compost on the top layer and don't till it in. Minimum soil destruction. So you may say no digging. I guess this is dug, nice hand length, almost deep. That's clearly just getting down to the native dirt. This is definitely some digging here. Okay, so I'm going to be planting broccoli and turnip. I want to transplant these broccolis here. This one's got some pest damage on it. It's from snails that hide down in the soil and who knows where. And people say turnips don't transplant well because they have a supposedly deep taproot that you mess up or something when you transplant them. So I'm going to transplant these turnips anyways and see if I can get some good turnips. And they're going to be alternating down the row, so it'll be broccoli, turnip, broccoli, turnip, broccoli, turnip. You got to keep that nice diversity going. I believe in diversity in the garden, of course. So I do like to put a layer of nice mulch on top of the compost, so I'm going to use the shredded okra to put right on top of the compost, and that'll help protect the composting so I can get the maximum benefit from that compost. And I don't want the compost to just dry up on the top layer, and so I want the plants to be able to actually put roots into the compost all the way up close to the top layer of the compost. And in order for that to happen, you have to cover it with some mulch pretty nice and thickly, and keep it moist, of course, so that the roots can have a good place to grow into and get maximum benefit from the compost that's just laying on that top layer of the soil. Actually, I'm running out of daylight. That's the okra mulch around each of the turnip seedlings, so it looks pretty nice. The light color is good because that'll keep the soil loose, or the soil will be cool. We're still getting 90-degree days, the blazing sun, so super light mulch will make a big difference. Now for the broccoli to go in. If you want to see a video on how I save these broccoli seedlings using Instamatic compost tea, you can click here or somewhere on the screen. Okay, so now it's time to transplant that broccoli. It's the middle of hot Sunday afternoon in October, so probably 90 degrees or so. Crazy. Broccoli seedlings are now transplanted. I just have these smaller little seedlings that are left, and these have been getting torn up by snails, but I think transplanting them will break that cycle, hopefully, from the predator snail, the killer snails. But these ones are obviously much poorer condition, so don't have too high of expectations, but I'm going to put them in the ground anyways and see what happens. Instamatic compost tea. Just give these guys a little dose before I transplant them. Okay, so I have a couple of blank spots here. Ran out of broccoli, and I'm going to plant a couple of kales in these two little spots between the broccoli. Go ahead and put the overhead sprinkler on it for at least a good hour, soaking all that ground that has the new transplants, and then I'll mulch over it all real nicely. Hard working sprinkler right there. Wet. Now it's finally time to put the mulch down. The rest of the mulch to protect all these seedlings, and then I'll finally be done with this weekend's broccoli and turnip and kale planting. Yeah, so. I guess I'll check back in a week or 2 or 3, give y'all an update on how these little seedlings are doing. I'm honestly going to be surprised if they perk up and do super well. Okay, I'm happy to report it's been 2 weeks, right at exactly 2 weeks since I've transplanted these. They've all been thriving, not just surviving. So we've had a little bit of cooler weather, maybe 70s on average, nighttime lows and daytime highs, 70 average. The daytimes has been getting up into the 80s. We've had 3 days in which it rained, maybe, I think, and then I've watered maybe a couple times in between since then, and so these seedlings have just taken off. Let me show you for comparison. Not a single one of my transplants have died. I haven't noticed any transplant shock. It's just been all good since they've been able to get their roots into some good composted soil and take off. So here's a typical broccoli transplant here. Here's those same 2 broccoli seedlings. And what I'm going to do now actually is thin one of these guys, chop it. Okay, that's one down, so the other one will have plenty of space. Here's some of the sad turnips, but maybe some magic will happen with the turnips. Okay, so right next to these couple of broccolis, there's the turnips, and they're putting on plenty of new green growth, and I didn't really carefully inspect the root. Hasn't really bulbed up, but it's gotten thicker, and there's another turnip over here. I need to thin that one off. Yes. Alright. And here's the other turnip next to it. So we have these 2 turnips for comparison. One broccoli. Another broccoli with a little double on here. I got one that's clearly overshadowing this other one that I'm going to thin off now as well. So I got that one out. And this one has all the space it could want. Kale. Broccoli. Take a quick look at those couple of kales that I planted right at the end. Here's another broccoli. Definitely taken off. And the other kale. Like and subscribe. Be great.